All right, here we are on part 3 of the Reliable Sources project. This part's a pretty important one. So in part 1, you selected a topic and I had some feedback for you and some of us went back and forth, and hopefully you've got your topic nailed down. In part 2, you had to come up with a list of criteria that you're going to use to evaluate your topics. All right, and you went searching for some sites that talked about that. Now, in part 3, what we're going to do is actually look for articles that are about your topic. Now, we're looking not for like how-to articles. We're not looking for, like the history of whatever the thing is articles. What we're really looking for are articles that talk about the impact and the importance and about whatever the question is that you came up with or that you landed on. If you haven't landed on a topic yet, if you didn't see my email, you need to get a hold of me ASAP, because otherwise, what are you going to look for this week, right? So one of the things we're going to talk about, or some of the resources that I give you this week, are how do you tell like a scholarly resource from a non-scholarly resource? What's the criteria there? How do you distinguish between the two things? So I'll show you something that will help you decide that. And then you might have to go do a little looking to see what else. There's a couple of links that are good resources on the assignment. But let's go ahead and jump into Moodle. I always recommend that you open the outline, because it just makes it really easy to jump between the different parts here. And again, we've got kind of a truncated version. In this particular part, you're going to learn how to distinguish scholarly from non-scholarly resources and how to search for articles and videos about your topic to create a bibliography. You'll begin the process of evaluating the reliability of those sources. So let's jump down to where that actually starts, right here. So what your goal is you're going to look for 8 to 10 articles on your topic. The first thing you have to do is figure out how to do a search on a topic. And so I've got actually here a word about searching. If you jump down to that, I'm going to give you 3 resources here that'll give you some really good tips. But the first thing you want to think of is, what are the main concepts in this question or this topic? Are there other ways of phrasing that? Google's not the only place you can look. As a matter of fact, for your final project, and we'll get into this a little more next week's assignment, but for your final project, you're going to have to look in like a library database. You might want to check Google Scholar. There's some other scholarly resources that you'll want to take advantage of to make this a reliable, valid project. This page from Cornell University, you notice I'm picking like reputable universities. These are really good sources. So anyhow, Cornell University's got a scholarly journal page, and it breaks this down into 4 categories. So the types of, and it's mostly talking about periodicals here, but I think this applies to all kinds of different stuff. And a lot of what you'll be finding will be periodicals anyhow. So the first category, the highest category, is scholarly or peer-reviewed articles, then substantive news articles, popular articles, and sensational tabloid articles. So let me click this link and we'll jump over to the Cornell page and see how they have this organized. On the Cornell page, you'll notice, so here's the categories I just told you about, and you'll notice there's a tab for each category. And so under the category, it gives you a definition. It gives you some things to look for, some criteria to look for. And then it gives you some examples. So it's not an exhaustive list, but just to give you an idea. And then you go next, news and general interest. And so same thing, what it is, what to look for, and here's some examples. And I would add things like a lot of the links that I have that I give you are from this category. So MIT Tech Review would fit under here. Anyhow, there's several different examples of news and general interest that are higher quality. When we come down to the popular category, Ebony, Parents, People, these are kind of like the grocery store tabloid magazines, or the grocery store magazines that you find in the checkout sometimes, Reader's Digest. Not that they're bad information, it's just that their level of validation is not as high as the other 2 categories. And then sensational and tabloid. So the Globe, the National Enquirer, these are the ones, like, pretty much these are just fiction. They make this stuff up. So don't use that. So what I'm going to look for is that you're finding your articles from these top two categories. All right. So make sure to take a good look at this word on scholarly sources and this Cornell University guide so that you understand what we're looking for. Now, let's go back up. So what are we looking for? So you're going to find 8 to 10 articles and make a list. So I'd start a Google document. Just list out your articles. Okay. Put the URL, just get that started. And then once you have the title and the name or the link, then what you're going to do for each of these is categorize them. So based on that criteria checklist, the scholarly articles, what categories it fit in? Is it scholarly? Is it, tabloid? Where does it go? I would avoid tabloid. And then you're going to look at your evaluation criteria from last week. Okay. So I haven't graded all those yet, but more or less, if you've got like 5 reasonable things, I'll probably let you go with it, but it'll be a good start. So go with your criteria from last week and just briefly look over your article. Does it have an author? Well, if it doesn't, get rid of it. Find something else that has an author. Okay. How many of these things is it current? How many of these things? I don't know what's on your list. There's a whole bunch of things. Anyhow, how many things at a glance can you find out? And then currency. How current is it? So I'm going to ask you to find the date of when it was written. Okay. And then reliability. I'm giving you a little chart here on the reliability scale. So based on those couple of things you just looked at, give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 5. 1, not at all reliable. Wouldn't use this article for academic paper. 5, fantastic resource that checks out all my criteria. It has an author, it is scholarly, and it's recent. Okay, so that would be a 5. So you're looking for things in the category of 4 or 5 in reliability. So what do you do with all that information? Well, I gave you an example. Probably, now you don't have to do it this way. You could do a bullet list or something. Probably the easiest thing that I want here is, you give me the citation. You have to make a citation out of it. So go to Citation Machine or EasyBib or, whatever your choice is. Make a citation. Make sure you have a link. Make sure the link is clickable. Okay. And then just break, and you can copy this chart if you want. So you see categories. So I gave you an MIT article. It's a substantive news article because I said it's MIT Tech Review. Here's the date. I give it a 5. I would definitely use this. And then here's my criteria. Notice that I'm not writing up a ton of stuff here. You'll have to do a much bigger evaluation for the next part of the project. But here, I just want you to do some touch points. Okay, who's the author? What do they do? Is it relevant? These are the criteria I pulled up. What's the purpose? Is it objective? That's my criteria. You use whatever your criteria is. Notice that I don't put currency on there because it has its own column. And I just explained this down here. I did put a link to GCF Learn because this is a table in Google Docs. And you notice that this top row is like it's merged. That's what they call it. So basically, it was another row that had all these columns and I just merged it. Anyhow, there's lots of tips. There's a GCF Learn tutorial about that. So again, feel free to just copy that table into your own and then just copy paste it 8 or 10 times, however many times you need. Make sure, the only thing I ask is make sure the table doesn't break over a page. So, like you have one row or 2 rows on one page and then it breaks to the other page and has another row. Just put it on it, just make a new page. Okay, we're not like running out of space on pages. Submission process, similar, same thing as before. So you're going to save it as a PDF. Make sure this is your file name, which is, if you make sure it's your document name, then it will become your file name. And here's the criteria that should be graded on. So this one's upping the ante a little bit. The first 2 projects were 30. This one's worth 40. The next one will probably be worth 50. And the last one will probably be worth 100. So, I can't guarantee that's how I'm doing the last 2, but that's what I'm thinking. And so this is worth a pretty good chunk of change on here. It's worth taking the time, but it's not that hard because what you're doing, the hardest part is searching and then reading what you found and then kind of deciding these things. But the actual write-up part is not that complicated. It's just as simple as this times 8 or 10. I'll give you a range, 8 to 10 different articles. It's okay to have a few articles that are in the 2 or 3 category, but most of your stuff should be in 4 and 5. All right. And you might want to go look in the library databases. We're gonna, like I said, we're going to dig in a little deeper next week. I want you to have the whole purpose of this, the whole reason I'm asking you to find 8 to 10 things is I want you to have a good selection to choose from. I want to be able to give you a little bit of feedback and say, well, that's a really good one, but I don't think you ought to use that one. So you need some wiggle room in there to pick the final 5 that are going to go in your paper. Anyhow, that's what this project's all about. I think it's developing nicely. I like what I'm seeing getting turned in so far. Remember, if you're behind a little, you're not really behind. You just need to get on the ball. Message me if you have any questions.